When someone you care about is grieving, this is not the moment to hide behind awkward silence or fake smiles. This is not the time to search for the perfect words like you're solving a puzzle. You're not there to fix their pain, you're there to stand in it with them. Look them in the eye and let your presence scream louder than any Hallmark card. Say, I'm here, I'm not going anywhere. Let them see that you're not afraid of their tears, their anger, their silence. People in grief don't remember fancy phrases, they remember who stayed, who showed up, who didn't flinch when the room got heavy. You show up with honesty, with heart, and with the guts to sit in their storm without trying to push the clouds away. You want to help someone who's grieving. Stop obsessing over the exact sentence you're going to say. Stop rehearsing like it's a job interview. Presence over perfection, that's the rule. You don't have to be poetic. You don't have to be deep. You don't even have to talk that much. You just have to show up. Because when someone's in pain that raw, they're not grading your grammar or your emotional intelligence, they're drowning. And what they need most is to feel like they're not drowning alone. When you walk into that space, your job isn't to fix their heart. You're not a surgeon. You're a lifeguard. And lifeguards don't give speeches. They pull you out of the water or hold you up until you can breathe. That's presence. That's showing them you're steady. You're here, you're not looking for the nearest exit. Because their sadness makes you uncomfortable. We get it wrong because we think grief is a riddle to solve. We think there's some magic combination of words that will make their pain disappear. There isn't. The truth is you could say nothing at all and still mean everything, if you're willing to stand there and be a wall for them to lean on. Sometimes the most powerful sentence you'll ever say in those moments is, I'm here, not I'm here if you need me. Not I'm here but let me know when you're ready. Just I'm here, period. No escape hatch, no conditions. And yes, it will feel awkward. You'll want to fill the silence. You'll feel the urge to smooth it over, to throw in a well, at least, or on the bright side. Don't. That's not presence, that's running away with words. Presence is letting the silence sit there and not flinch. Presence is letting them cry without shoving a tissue in their face like it's a fire you're trying to put out. Presence is knowing that their pain is not your cue to perform, it's your cue to stay still and let them feel it without being alone in it. You don't realize how much that matters until you're the one grieving. You remember the people who showed up even if they said nothing. You remember the hand on your shoulder, the person who sat on your couch and didn't check their phone, the friend who didn't look at their watch. You remember the ones who didn't give you homework like be strong or keep your chin up. They just let you be weak. They let you break. They stayed through the storm. That's the difference, people who are there for you versus people who are there to make themselves feel better. The ones who are there for themselves rush to patch you up because your brokenness is uncomfortable for them. The ones who are there for you, they understand the power of simply not leaving. They don't try to paint over your pain, they just hold the frame steady while you figure out how to breathe again. So if you're walking into a room where grief is sitting heavy in the air, don't bring a script, bring yourself. Sit down, don't be afraid of the quiet. Let your eyes say you're not alone, let your presence do the talking. Because words can be forgotten, but presence leaves a permanent mark. And here's the thing, you might think it's too little, you might think all I did was sit there, I barely said anything, but to them, you weren't just sitting there. You were holding the ground steady under their feet when everything else was falling apart. You were proof that someone was willing to step into their pain and not run. That's not little, that's everything. So stop chasing the perfect line. Show up. Stay put. Be the steady heartbeat in the room when theirs feels shattered. That's how you help someone who's grieving. Not by speaking flawlessly but by refusing to leave when the silence feels too loud. That's presence over perfection every single time. When someone is grieving, the worst thing you can do is tiptoe around the truth like it's made of glass. They already know what happened. They're living it. They wake up with it, they go to sleep with it. Pretending it didn't happen or avoiding the words because it makes you uncomfortable doesn't protect them. It isolates them. Acknowledge the loss directly. Say their name, speak the truth, let them know you see it, and you're not afraid to face it with them. People think they're being kind by dancing around the pain. They use soft, vague phrases like they've gone to a better place, or we've lost someone. But in grief, vague feels hollow. It feels like you're afraid to say it because you can't handle it. And if you can't handle saying it, how can you handle supporting them? There is a deep human relief in hearing someone speak the reality out loud. I'm so sorry your dad died. I know you miss her so much. This is brutal. I'm here. It's not cruel. It's not too heavy. And real is what they need right now. You might be scared that acknowledging the loss will hurt them more, like you're pouring salt in a wound, but here's the truth. They're already feeling it every second. You can't make it worse by speaking it, but you can make it lonelier by pretending it's not there. Acknowledging it is like looking them in the eye and saying, I see your pain, I'm not going to pretend it's not happening. You don't have to carry it in silence around me. That's how you build trust in those moments. There's a courage in saying the thing everyone else is avoiding. It's the courage of showing them that their grief doesn't scare you away. Because here's the thing. Grief is a heavy, messy, unpredictable beast. It's crying one minute, laughing at a memory the next, then collapsing into silence. When you acknowledge the loss directly, you're not trying to tame that beast. You're just standing there saying, I see it, I can stand here with you. That's powerful. You don't have to overcomplicate it. You don't have to deliver a eulogy or come up with the perfect poetic line. It's not about performance, it's about being specific enough that they know you're not just offering a generic sympathy, but that you're with them in their loss. I can't imagine how much you miss your brother. I'm so sorry about Sarah. I know your home feels empty right now without her. These are not fancy sentences, they're grounded, they're clear, and they tell the grieving person that you're willing to walk into their reality instead of standing at the edge. Avoiding the loss because it's uncomfortable for you is selfish. It sends the message that their grief is too much, that you can't handle being around it. And grief already has a way of making people feel like they're a burden. The last thing they need is more proof that they should hide. When you acknowledge it openly, you give them permission to speak freely. You make space for their stories, their tears, their moments of silence. And yes, it's going to feel heavy. It's going to pull at you. But that's the price of connection. You carry a piece of it with them. And they will remember that. Not because you solved anything, but because you didn't flinch when they told you how much it hurt. You didn't look for an escape. You stayed in it. It's not about constantly reminding them of the loss they don't need reminding. It's about giving them the dignity of not having to pretend around you. A simple, direct acknowledgement is a gift in a world that often wants to rush people past their pain. The moment you do it, you tell them, your reality matters here. I'm not going to erase it with clichés. I'm not going to act like it's invisible. I see it. I see you. And that's what people hold on to. Not the perfect speech, not the comforting platitudes, but the moment someone had the guts to say what everyone else avoided. The moment someone refused to hide from the truth of their loss. The moment someone stood in the same reality they were standing in and didn't try to change the subject. That's how you acknowledge loss. You face it, you speak it, you let it be real in the space between you. And in that space you give them one of the rarest gifts in grief. The comfort of being seen exactly where they are, without disguise, without denial, without fear. When someone you care about is grieving, the words "I'm here" only mean something if you back them up with action. Support without conditions. That's the real test, not "I'm here if you need me," because that's a polite way of putting the responsibility back on them. Not "I'm here but let me know when you're ready," because that's telling them you'll show up only on your terms. Unconditional support means you don't need an invitation to care. You don't disappear when it gets messy. You don't clock out because the grief is lasting longer than you expected. Grief doesn't run on a schedule. It doesn't come in neat, predictable waves. It's random, ugly, and exhausting. If you want to support someone through it, you have to be ready for the long haul. It's easy to show up on the first day when the shock is fresh and the house is full of people bringing food and flowers. But where are you a month later? 6 months later? When everyone else has moved on? Are you still showing up? That's what separates the people who mean "I'm here" from the ones who just say it. Support without conditions means you don't judge how they grieve. You don't give them deadlines for their sadness. You don't start dropping hints like "you've got to move on" or "it's time to get back to normal." You accept that their normal may never look the same again. You give them permission to cry without explaining why. You let them cancel plans without making them feel guilty. You understand that some days they'll want to talk and other days they'll shut down, and you don't take either one personally. And here's the part most people get wrong. You don't need to wait for them to ask for help. Grief makes people tired, forgetful, overwhelmed. Sometimes they can't even figure out what they need, so you act. You drop off groceries without making it a big event. You send a message just to say you're thinking about them, without expecting a reply. You shovel their driveway or fix the thing that's broken around the house without turning it into a favor they owe you back. That's support without conditions. It's doing without keeping score. It's also about showing up when it's inconvenient. Not just when you're free, not just when you're in the mood. If they call you at 10 p.m. because they can't stop crying, you pick up. If they want company on a random Tuesday night, you find a way to be there. Because grief doesn't care about your calendar and real support adjusts to that reality. Sometimes support looks like sitting next to them in silence. Sometimes it looks like taking them out for a distraction. Sometimes it's texting them a memory of the person they lost, reminding them it's okay to talk about them without making things awkward. The key is you're consistent. You don't disappear when they don't respond right away. You don't get offended when they turn down your offers. You understand that just knowing you're available without pressure is a lifeline in itself. You also have to watch your own ego. Support without conditions means you're not there to feel like a hero. You're not there so they can thank you. You're not there for recognition. You're there because they matter to you, and that's the only reason you need. If they never post about how great you've been, if they never write you a thank you card, you're still there, because this is not about you, it's about making sure they know they're not walking through this alone. The people who truly make a difference in grief are the ones who show up in the small, steady ways, not the ones with the big dramatic gestures in the beginning, but the ones who quietly keep checking in months later, the ones who don't need a reason to reach out, who don't ask for anything in return, who stay even when the grief turns into a long, slow ache instead of a sharp pain. If you're going to say I'm here, then be there. Not until it's uncomfortable, not until you get busy, not until you feel like they should be over it. Be there because grief doesn't end just because the rest of the world stopped talking about it. Be there because unconditional support means exactly that. No conditions, no deadlines, no escape clauses, just you, steady, present, and ready to carry some of the weight when they can't. That's the kind of support people remember for the rest of their lives. Not the people who showed up once, but the ones who kept showing up without needing to be asked. The ones who proved that I'm here wasn't just something they said in the moment. It was a promise they kept. When someone is grieving, your words are not the main event. Your ears are. Listening more than you speak is not passive. It's powerful. It's you stepping back and saying, this is your space, your pain, your story. Too many people make the mistake of turning a grieving person's moment into their own performance. They start telling stories about their own losses. They start throwing advice like confetti. They fill every pause with something they think is comforting. But when you're grieving, you don't need someone to steal the microphone. You need someone willing to sit in the audience and just listen. Listening is more than keeping your mouth shut. It's being fully present in the silence. It's resisting the urge to jump in when their voice cracks. It's letting them take as long as they need to get the words out, even if it feels like forever. It's giving them room to talk in circles, to repeat themselves, to stop mid-sentence because the pain gets too heavy. When you listen like that, you're telling them, I'm not here to rush you. I'm not here to shape your grief into something tidy. I'm here to hear it exactly as it is. The problem is, most people can't stand that kind of raw silence. They get uncomfortable. They want to fix the moment. They think if I just say something smart, maybe they'll feel better. But grief isn't a puzzle you solve with the right line. It's a wound that needs air. And your listening is that air. You don't heal it by sealing it up with words. You help by opening space for them to let it breathe. When you listen more than you speak, you're not just hearing their words. You're hearing what's underneath them. You notice when they pause before a name. You hear the way their tone changes. When they talk about a certain memory, you feel the moments when they're holding back tears. Not because they don't want to cry, but because they don't know if it's safe in front of you. Your job is to make it safe. That's done with your eyes on them, your phone away, your attention locked in. Don't underestimate the power of a nod. A soft yeah. That must be so hard. These aren't filler, they're proof you're engaged. And when they do stop talking, don't immediately leap in with your story or your solution. Let the pause. Sometimes they'll fill it with something deeper. Sometimes they'll just breathe. Either way, you've given them the rare gift of uninterrupted space. Listening more than you speak also means letting them tell the same story again and again without showing impatience. Grief has a way of looping. People go back to the moment they got the news, or a last conversation, or a memory they can't stop replaying. It's part of how they process. If you cut them off or change the subject because you've heard it before, you're telling them their grief has an expiration date. But when you listen again with the same focus as the first time, you're telling them, I'm still here, I can handle this as many times as you need to say. And yes, it's draining sometimes. Listening to grief means absorbing some of that heaviness, and it's tempting to lighten it with humor or distraction. But the deepest connections are built when you resist that urge and just stay in it with. You don't have to agree with every thought they have in that state. You don't have to relate it to your own life. You just have to give them the dignity of being heard without interruption. This isn't about never speaking. It's about speaking with intention. The less you talk, the more weight your words carry when you do. A simple "I can't imagine how hard this is"
Or I'm so glad you told me that lands heavier when it comes after real listening. Your silence makes your voice matter. People in grief don't remember the perfectly crafted speeches. They remember who let them spill everything without judgment. They remember who didn't rush to fill the silence. They remember who could sit in the discomfort without making it about themselves. That's what listening more than you speak does. It tells them in a way no words can, that their pain matters enough for you to make room for it. So stop thinking you have to be the one with all the answers. Stop measuring your worth by the number of things you say. Show up, sit down, and give them your undivided ear. Let them be messy, repetitive, quiet, loud, whatever they need to be. Your job is not to guide the conversation, it's to protect it, and in the end, they won't remember every word you spoke, but they'll remember exactly how it felt to be heard. When someone is grieving, the fastest way to make them feel unseen is to throw clichés and forced positivity at them. They're in a better place. Time heals all wounds. At least they lived a full life. You might think you're helping, but those words don't land the way you imagine. To a grieving heart, they can feel like you're skipping past their pain, like you're telling them to package it neatly and move on. Grief isn't a problem you solve with optimism. It's a wound you honor with honesty. The truth is, people use clichés because they're uncomfortable. They're trying to fill the space, to keep it light, to avoid sitting in the heaviness. But that's not what a grieving person needs. They need someone who will meet them in their reality, not drag them into a false sense of comfort they didn't ask for. Saying they're in a better place doesn't erase the fact that their place here feels empty now. Saying time heals all wounds doesn't change that every second right now feels unbearable. Avoiding these shallow lines means you have to be brave enough to sit in the truth. The truth might be ugly, it might be painful, but it's real, and real is what grief responds to. When you tell someone this is awful, I'm so sorry you're going through it, you're not making them feel worse. You're validating what they already know. You're saying, I'm not going to try to paint over your pain with fake colors. Forced positivity can actually shut someone down. When you tell them to look on the bright side or be grateful for the time you had, you're subtly saying that their sadness is too much, that they should start focusing on something else, so you can feel more comfortable. That's not support. That's you managing your own discomfort at their expense. And in grief, people can sense that. They know when you're trying to rush them into okay so you don't have to deal with not okay. Instead, strip away the sugarcoating. Replace clichés with present. Instead of they're in a better place, try I know you miss them so much, and I can't imagine how hard this is. Instead of time heals all wounds, say this must feel impossible right now, but I'm not going anywhere. These aren't magic words. They're honest words. They don't pretend to solve anything. They just acknowledge what's true and commit to standing in it with them. You also have to be okay with not having a positive spin to offer. Some moments don't have silver linings. Some losses just hurt, and nothing you say will change. That's not failure, that's reality. And by refusing to slap a happy sticker on their pain, you're giving them the space to feel it without shame. Think about the times you've gone through something devastating. Did you remember the people who tried to cheer you up right away? Or did you remember the ones who looked you in the eye and said, this is awful and I'm here? You remember the people who didn't try to rush you out of the darkness, but who sat next to you until you could find your own way forward. That's the difference between support and dismissal. Sometimes avoiding forced positivity means you just say less. You don't need to respond to every tear with a pep talk. You don't need to fill every pause with a but at least. You can let the sadness be exactly what it is, and trust that your presence is enough. The grieving person isn't going to measure your worth by the cleverness of your words. They're going to remember if you made them feel like they had permission to hurt. It takes discipline to hold back the clichés. They're easy, they roll off the tongue, they make you feel like you've done your part. But real comfort takes more than easy words. It takes the courage to step into someone's storm without trying to change the weather. So the next time you're with someone who's grieving, check yourself before you speak. Ask if what you're about to say is for them or for you. If it's for you, swallow it. If it's to make them feel less alone in exactly what they're feeling, say it. If it's honest and grounded, it will matter. If it's rehearsed and sugar-coated, it will fall flat. Grief is raw. It's unpolished. It doesn't need to be wrapped in pretty language to be bearable. It needs space. It needs truth, and it needs people who aren't afraid to stand in it, without trying to force a smile. Because at the end of the day, they won't remember that you looked on the bright side. They'll remember that you looked right at their pain, and didn't turn away. When someone is grieving, it's not about perfect words, polished speeches, or quick fixes. It's about showing up. It's about having the courage to walk straight into the heaviness, instead of dancing around it. You start by being there. Fully there, because presence speaks louder than any sentence you could put together. You acknowledge the loss directly without flinching, because pretending it's not there makes it heavier to carry alone. You give support with no strings attached, not just for the first week when it's convenient, but for the long, messy, endless middle where most people disappear. You listen more than you speak, because grief needs space, not noise, and in your silence you give them the safety to let it all out. And you ditch the hollow clichés, the "at least in the time heals all wounds," because their pain doesn't need a sales pitch, it needs someone brave enough to meet it honestly. Grief is not a problem to be solved, it's a journey someone has to walk, but they shouldn't have to walk it alone. You don't have to carry all of their pain, you just have to make sure they don't have to carry it without someone by their side. That's what they'll remember, not your eloquence, not your attempts to cheer them up, but that you stayed, that you faced the truth with them, that you didn't run when the air got heavy.